nonsense. If Shock's better, Shock's always better. Don't let your record influence what you're trying to pick.
So you see there, Melissa DeTora, that's who we'll be following. Tom Ross, Saul Malka, Harry Corvasi, and a kind of a cool backstory, Frank Lepore also at the X1 table.
Yeah, he's known more for his work on TCGplayer.com than necessarily his success in tournaments, although he has posted some very good standard performances on the independent circuit and finds himself also within striking distance of a top 8 berth.
All right, now one thing I want to point out with Melissa's draft here, she is sitting to the left, it appears, of Tom Ross. We saw Tom Ross last time on camera drafting a very aggressive 2-color conservative approach. Now here's a question. You said your record doesn't affect what you do in a draft. If you're sitting on that side of Tom Ross, does that affect how you approach a draft?
Absolutely. Though what's interesting here is to the right of Tom is Saul Malka, and if Tom knows what happened in the last draft, Saul 3-0ing with just a 2-color beatdown deck, that could also influence what Tom's picking too. So there's a lot of cascading consequences if these players are aware of the tendencies of the people around them.
Yeah, certainly if you have Saul and Tom, Melissa, we may see her take a more 5-color approach to the draft.
If I was on the fence about what pick I was wanting to make initially, I would err on the side of taking the card that facilitates a 4 or 5-color strategy.
See there, this is the rest of the table. These players at X1 or better, most likely half of this table will make the top 8. The players with 2-1 records or better, and we'll go over to Melissa. Copies of Master the Way. It's one of her uncommons, which she shuffled to the front. You see 1 mana fixer, it's Bloodfell Caves. And Feet of Resistance, another card she's contemplating for the first pick.
Feet of Resistance may be the best card in this pack, but again, to speak of the issue with drafting next to Tom, it is the one that's most likely to get her trapped behind whatever Tom's trying to do.
Yeah, so Feet, a great combat trick. It's single-colored. Her rare was Mind Swipe. That one's not something you want too much. Master the Way is probably just on the surface the most powerful card here?
Most likely, yes.
You see a conservative approach here. Melissa, Feet of Resistance as a first pick.
And she was obs-on in her previous draft too, so maybe she has a strong preference in that direction.
Yeah. It's interesting to see a combat trick get first picked in a format. That's a very strong endorsement of the card. Usually those don't start going until the later picks in a draft. Pack 2, Warden of the Eye, a powerful card there. Shambling Attendants also at the front. And she sees a copy of Obs-on Guide. If she wants to repeat that performance, she may go there.
And opening up on Feet of Resistance into Obs-on Guide settles you very nicely.
Now, how do you feel Obs-on Guide compares to something like Warden of the Eye as far as power?
I think Obs-on Guide is probably slightly better, though if I had a strong Jeskai preference, I would be happy pulling the trigger on the other card.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she goes for that. There's also the 2-color option. There's Mardu Skull Hunter, but it will be Obs-on Guide that is her second pick.
Melissa has to be pretty happy with this opening thus far. I mean, getting an Obs-on Guide past 2 is a pretty strong signal and pairs very nicely with the first pick, Feet of Resistance.
Yeah, both of them a pair of commons. We'll go to pack 3. On colors, puts Mardu Hateblade at the front. And Warname Aspirant, also something she's interested in. And then now we start to get to the question of, okay, you have 2 powerful first picks. Where does your mana fixing go? There is a Jungle Hollow here, which seems to favor. Looking at Disowned Ancestor as well.
Well, the issue here is a lot of the cards that she's looking at here, the Hateblade, the Disowned Ancestors, if you were 2.5 colors and knew which 2.5 colors you were, maybe you could take one of those cheap creatures if you knew it aligned with one of your dominant colors. Melissa isn't armed with that information right now, and since all the spells in that pack were pretty mediocre, I like her taking the mana base, or the mana fixer, because that informs other picks down the line.
Yeah, Jungle Hollow was the pick. It's now a white card and a black-green mana fixer. Going to her next pack, she has Rite of the Serpent in here. And as far as power level is concerned, there's nothing too high.
There is a Snowhorn Rider, and that did cause Melissa to pause there momentarily. But she's going to stay the course, it looks like.
Yeah, so definitely looking to be an Obs-on style deck. Rite of the Serpent was the pick there. That one powerful enough to take over something like a duel or not wishing to branch out.
And on top of her black dual land, it may signal that she's looking at black to be one of her 2 dominant colors if she's trying to draft a 2.5 color deck.
Interesting fact, Jeskai Ascendancy, a powerful card here, both in limited and constructed as the rare. Still mana fixing for her in Tranquil Cove. She just wants to stay straight on the Obs-on path. She has some ramparts. some Dazzling Ramparts, but she's looking between a consistent pick and a powerful pick. You saw there, Jeskai Ascendancy was up fairly high on her list. However, she ended up going with the Witness of the Ages. That's a colorless morph and a very safe card.
It's very safe, and keep in mind that she passed a very powerful Jeskai card earlier when she took the Abzan guide, so she can assume that perhaps the person to her left is already on Jeskai and doesn't want to fight over it.
Goes into her next pack. Right now, black-white appears to be her base. Mardu Rough Rider, Killshot, Mardu Hateblade, all available to her. And it's Killshot. It's interesting, it looks like she's building a slower deck. You see cards like Killshot, Rite of the Serpent spent on her last picks, but yet, even though she's a slower deck, she's still being very conservative on her finishers, opting for cards like Witness of the Ages.
Well, there's a lot of powerful 5 and 6 mana cards, so you can almost win the game with anything. It's just about, do you have enough action going on early on, and do you have enough mana fixing to cast all your stuff on time? And Melissa appears to be erring really on the side of caution here.
All right, and that was, I do want to go to that pick. Singing Bellstrike was the pick. She had Jeskai Student available. She has no blue mana fixing and no blue cards.
Jeskai Student is just pretty low in power level in an Abzan deck, so that might be a speculative pick. Maybe it just ends up not getting played at all. But, you know, if she decides to pivot towards a different strategy, maybe towards Sultai, maybe towards Jeskai, she'd probably be better served having this than having a Jeskai Student that's going to be mediocre in any case.
Yeah, and Melissa running out of a lot of powerful picks here. Picked an Abzan banner for that pick there. And I can't imagine she's particularly happy with her draft at this point. She's got some mana fixing, but it seems a little direction, like she's lacking on direction.
Things started off very well for her, but it looked like the Abzan cards dried up, and she did pass some good Jeskai and Mardu cards, and you're never happy when you feel like you may be in the wrong color combination at the end of pack 1.
Yeah, Bloodfell Caves was her pick there, so she does have some pretty decent mana fixing. She picked an Abzan banner, a Bloodfell Caves, in addition to a Jungle Hollow, so 3 duels there, but not too much actual meat in the deck.
Yeah, you see there's a Bloodfire Expert left in that pack. Not that that card's particularly good, but with 4 cards left, you have to feel like red may be very open, especially with all the Jeskai and Mardu that got fed her way earlier in the pack.
Yeah, and unfortunately, red is really the one color where Melissa isn't, so it'll take a lot of work for her to move in on that. And rather than trying to move in on red, she looks like she's going to stay the course with black-white. Mardu Hateblade came around late, took that one pretty readily.
Yeah, I think that her preference would be to stay to Abzan if pack 2 allows her to do that. And so taking the Hateblade makes a lot of sense.
And see if she gets anything here on the wheel. Dutiful Return will be the pick. And then one last card. So looking back at pack 1, Melissa has 2 dual lands. She has black-red and black-green. It looks like she can be base black here. She has, but then when you look at the actual cards in her deck, those front 5 are really the only things that she can play. It's an Abzan Guide, a Feat of Resistance, a Killshot, a Mardu Hateblade. I guess there's 6, a Rite of the Serpent, and then the Witness of the Ages.
So this is one of those scenarios where I think the first 2 picks of pack 2 are really going to dictate what Melissa does. If there are solid Abzan picks for her, I think she's just going to sell right in, and even if pack 3 is a little rough, she can probably get to 23 playables. If she whiffs, or if she opens up a Sultai Bomb or something, we may see her try to move into a 4th color or abandon Abzan altogether.
Yeah, well, what are her options? You know, so she can stay Abzan. She has some black mana fixing, and the bulk of her cards are white, though she really doesn't have too many cards as of yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of options because I believe because she did well with Abzan in the previous draft, because she opened up on Feat of Resistance in the guide, her preference would be to stay the course, but she has the option to bail or at least redirect her draft slightly, and may want to do that because it didn't seem like a lot of Abzan was coming through after that guide second pick.
And opening on the second pack.
Oh,
and
there we go.
If you wanted to be Abzan, she certainly saw some direction there. Siege Rhino was what she opened. You see she's already moved that one to the front, but wants to know the other Abzan cards in the pack. There's Jungle Hollow, Shambling Attendants, Mardu Horde Chief. These are all cards she'd be willing to play. Is there anything she'd take other than the Siege Rhino?
There's no way she's not taking the Siege Rhino. She may want to see what she can realistically hope comes back out of the pack. The pack is fairly deep for Abzan, so I wouldn't be surprised if the dual land at the minimum came back, and she may get a real spell of substance back out of this pack too. A lot of good options.
Even some green 2-drops, Highland Game and Archer's Parapet in that pack. We'll see which of those come back. He said, yeah, pretty much 4 cards that she'd be very willing to play.
And I think Melissa's deck is shaping up to be much more of an Archer's Parapet deck than a Highland Game deck, so I bet she's hoping the wall comes back. It's one of those two.
Siege Rhino will go a long way in helping shore up this deck. And we go to the next pack. We see her putting a high priority on dual lands. Sidisi's Pet is there as a morph. And this is kind of where I felt like we were pack 1 again. There's no standout card on power level, so it's really about building an archetype at this point.
And at this point, these cards are all so mediocre that the dual land may be the pick that Melissa wants here. Your mana can never be good enough, even for the 3-color decks.
Yeah, it's going to be a second pick Jungle Hollow there. Was also Wooded Foothills available. She doesn't have any red yet, though. So Hollow is probably just the safer pick. Looking like she wants to be straight Obzon without a splash at the moment. You know, and a lot of times there seems to be some... This is an interesting spot where you get yourself in is, what are the signals here? You know, you see another pack here from Melissa. Einok Bondkin, a high pick, but she does have a dual land, and she has a lot of... She has her choice of different common creatures, but they do seem somewhat flat on the power level. You know, do you want Bondkins? Do you want long shot squads?
I think you always want the Bondkins. I think that's one of the premier white commons in the set.
She's going to go ahead and agree with that. Going to take that. Her deck still looks like it's base white, I would say.
Once you have the quality mana fixing and the low drops, you can be really liberal with taking a lot of powerful stuff on your top end. So if Melissa shorts that up, she can be comfortable taking some more expensive, more powerful cards down the line.
Another copy of Obzon Guide for her. She shuffles that one to the front. Some very powerful options if she could splash. There's Mardu Charm, an Avalanche Tusker that's not really available to her here. She's Obzon so far.
And I think maybe if the guide was in the pack, you may see Melissa take something like Mardu Charm and speculate on a 4th color. But the guide allows her to just cement herself fully into Obzon. I think between this, the Siege Rhino that she opened up, we're not going to see any deviation. She's going to be Obzon for better or for worse going forward.
Now, does that mean she's base Obzon? Would a good rare open up a splash for her?
Maybe, but I think they would require something pretty significant. Well,
and speaking of something significant, Zergo Helm Smasher still in this pack. This is pick 4 pack 2.
And this means that the Mardu cards that got sent through Melissa pack 1 didn't really hit.
There's the safe pick of Horde Chief, and there's the finisher here with Zergo. See, she's looking between the two of them.
I love the discipline.
I could never do that.
That's my pick.
I understand. Oh, I get it. It's probably correct.
That's my pick 100 times out of 100. Stay the course. That card is high enough in power level where it's not worth the deviation.
Yeah, Mardu Horde Chief is actually a very solid common. And you see some more discipline here. Ponyback Brigade in the pack. There was the potential for Melissa to make a pretty good Mardu splash.
But both of these, between the Horde Chief and the Scavenger, she is conceding some power level, but if she was completely whiffing in these packs, then yes, you might see her moving these Mardu cards, go to a 4th color, but no reason to get too fancy right now because she's getting quality picks.
Yeah, it is interesting. She hasn't actually gotten many good green cards. Her mana fixing is green, and she has 2 Obzon guides, and that's enough to keep her in Obzon, though it does seem like Mardu is a little more open from her seat. Regardless, that means she's in 2 of the right 3 colors.
Yeah, and she gets to just scoop up all the good white-black cards and touch a little bit of green. Probably have a very good mana base, and again, not sacrificing that much in card quality right now.
Yeah, she got one of the Chiefs as her 2-drop there. A solid creature, even with some synergies with the Mardu Horde Chief she took last pick. Chief of the Edge. Right now, she's just establishing a solid creature base. Pick's drying up a little bit. Has Highland Game and Rotting Mastodon. Also an interesting rare in there, Retribution of the Ancients. Not something she can use, but...
I think that's a card where if you focus your deck around it, can be extremely powerful, but way too late in the draft for Melissa to worry about that sort of thing.
And now we are back to her first pack. We'll see what tabled out of it. Shambling Attendants was the card that made it back. There were a lot of green options. So both Archer's Parapet, Highland Game, those guys did not table.
Though I think she probably would prefer the Shambling Attendants to the Highland Game, so this is a fine consolation prize.
Yeah, of note, and I believe the land was a Blossoming Sands, so all the green cards, including the green mana fixing, scooped up there.
Which isn't surprising because Melissa really hasn't seen any green in either direction from both packs. The substance of her deck are the black-white cards.
Right, it really is a light touch in green. So we see here going on to the late picks. Not particularly too many playables here, though. Scout the Borders is a card that can be run.
Though I think it's pretty marginal, and because Melissa, I think, will just be splashing green, I don't think that's going to make her final cut.
And last one's Krumar Bondkin picked up there.
A fine 23rd card.
Sure, it's a morph, then you can play it without getting too embarrassed. Pair of Scout the Borders, but yeah, you said that's more the Sultai card and certainly not one for someone who's splashing green.
Yeah, but that was a very successful pack too. The late Obzon Guide, opening up the Siege Rhino, getting to pick basically just out of black and white, and now she's set up very nicely for a 2.5 color deck going into pack 3, where she has every reason to anticipate that the black and white cards will be relatively deep.
Yeah, so power level, she's doing fine here. She has a Siege Rhino and 2 Obzon Guides, so has some good late game cards. In addition to that, she does have a Mardu Horde Chief and a pretty decent curve. Mana, she's looking fine. She's a 2-color deck. That's great, and actually already has a fair amount of mana fixing for that 2-color deck. And going into pack 3, what would you say she's looking for at this point?
Just hoping that it doesn't dry up. You know, pack 1 did get shallow pretty fast, so things to fill out the early part of the curve. Random power, but the biggest thing is just getting to 23 playable cards.
Yeah, she may be able to upgrade on some of these things. I guess in an ideal world, that Witness of the Ages could get cut. Maybe that Krumar Bondkin. Would love to have more Obzon Guide style cards.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching this draft. I think that I've agreed with probably 100% of her picks. She's, I think, navigated this very well.
+1 Zergo Helm Smasher.
No way. I would have made.
Oh, I know. It would be
way.
It would be so wrong. I can't control my inner 10-year-old. Unfortunately, I'm just like, oh man, this is a mythic rare, and he's got a sweet name.
It's true.
And I'd have to take it.
But there's not that many cards that are good when they're just staring at you in your hand.
Oh, I mean, I'd be looking at building phase, like, man, sure could use a Mardu Horde Chief.
Yep.
Oh,
Turn 3 rolls around, you don't have a play.
Go.
No
I have this Zergo in my hand, no red source to be seen. I have probably like 2 banners that I had to run because I wanted to play Zergo.
I'm really curious at this table, does someone have an exceptional Mardu deck, or are those cards just floating around in people's sideboards, or as a 4th color, or some such?
Some guy's playing a 5-color deck. We open up into pack 3. Melissa has a fair amount of options. She has a Crater's Claws, Murderous Cut, Sultai Flare.
And this is, I think, going to be a really easy Murderous Cut.
Yeah, Sultai Flare is a card I'd be really happy to play in her archetype, but Murderous Cut is head and shoulders above the other removal in the set.
It just has to be the best non-rare in the set, right?
Yeah, now see, if you were splashing Zergo Helm Smasher, you could then also take the Crater's Claws here.
Yeah, but I think you would still rather have Murderous Cut.
You actually like Murderous Cut more than Crater's Claws?
If Claws is better, it's not by very much.
I can see an argument for that. At 1 mana, killing any creature is really
insane. I think
Fireball among the best playables. Yeah,
I always felt Fireballs have been a little overrated in most limited formats. Crater's Claws is much better than just a Fireball.
Yeah, that +2 Claws.
Don't get me wrong, but
huge.
It's not even clear to me, even if she was playing red, that she would take the Claws there.
Yeah, just Pack 2, a little lighter for her until you got to that Einak Bondkin at the back. She was looking at a card like Incremental Growth up until she found that at the back of the pack. That's a card that seems to be pretty good in more aggressive green decks, and she's not that heavy green, probably couldn't run that.
Exactly. I think she's going to want to use her 2 lands and maybe 3 forests thereabouts in her deck, maybe the banner to facilitate her green. I think Incremental Growth would be a real stretch on her mana, given that she's trying to focus on black and white as her primary colors.
Yep, and second Einak Bondkin for Melissa, and her curve is turning out really nicely here. She already has a pair of Bondkins, a Horde Chief, a Sultai Scavenger. Her creature base is solid.
Yeah, this has so far been a great draft for Melissa. The only thing that was scary really was towards the middle of pack 1 where it looked like things were drying up, but that has not been an issue thus far through pack 2 and early through pack 3.
And there's a 3rd Einak Bondkin for her here. Look at this, there's a lot of temptations to go into another color. You see some dual lands, even a tri-land going here. This is the Mystic Monastery, so great mana for a Jeskai player. But
Nope.
but Einak Bonkin,
Stay the
big
course.
fan.
Again, if she was conceding power level to make these picks, that would be one thing. But she's picking up marquee commons and uncommons the whole way through, so no reason to deviate.
At 3 Einak Bondkins, does this change your valuation of some of these cards? You know, say something like a Dragon Scale Boon, a Feat of Resistance, something that can put counters on a creature.
Maybe a little bit.
Goes to her next pack. Disowned Ancestor, Watcher of the Roost, and Mardu Horde Chief. She does have an interesting option here between some of these white cards, I think.
I think I like Watcher of the Roost here. She doesn't really seem like a rush deck, really, to me.
Sure.
She's a little on the faster side, but she's not trying to just curve out as fast as possible with a bunch of warriors.
She is Siege Rhino 2 Obzon guide still.
Yeah. So, again, I just like Watcher of the Roost there. Always going to be good if you're on beatdown or if you're trying to control the game. Works both ways.
An interesting pack for here. There's actually a lot of green in here. That's something we didn't see pack 2. I was going to say most of the creatures here were in Teamer colors all the way up until the end where she found an unyielding Krumar. And there just seems white-black. It's been a theme in both drafting. We saw Tom Ross drafted and in Sealed yesterday. There seems to be just a solid curve of creatures in that pair.
Yep, and again, unyielding Krumar fits in very nicely for a deck that's trying to be base black-white, so. Another not spectacular pick, not splashy pick for Melissa, but still doing a great job filling out her deck.
Yeah, good options for her. Again, Mardu Hateblade, Timely Horde Chief. Or does she go for the mana? It's Blossoming Sands.
I think the Horde Chief is very good. A lot of this is just going to determine, does she feel like she already has 23 playables, in which case she can value the land much more highly, and what's her valuation of the Horde Mate? I think it's quite good.
Yeah, with 3 Einak Bondkins, the Horde Mate could be pretty good. You'd figure we'll get a guy back a lot of the time.
Yeah. That may be the first pick of the draft where I would have done something different than Melissa, but even still, if she is keeping track of the playables in her head and is confident she's getting to 23, then that pick's totally fine.
And she already has a Chief of the Edge. He may get a friend in Chief of the Scale for Melissa.
This is a great gift to get this late in the draft.
Though, to be fair, Einak Bondkin, remember, he's a soldier, actually, not a warrior.
Yeah.
So her warrior count's a little low. But,
Right.
I mean, this guy just on his own is a good creature.
Please pick up your pen. You have 15 seconds.
See, Alabaster Kieran, second Rite of the Serpent, available to her. One thing is she's had the chance to take a lot of Salt Road patrols and has passed on nearly all of them.
It's not particularly good.
Okay.
It's sort of
Does
my
that just remind-
evaluation.
I've
It's very good against aggressive decks. Very aggressive decks is powerful.
There have been a lot
against.
of different opinions. I've heard some people say that this is one of, outside of Bondkin, it's their favorite common Outlaster. Just because, it's good on the surface. At this point, Melissa taking a possible Woolly Loxodon for her deck. It's another real late game morph if she needs one. It's probably for the sideboard at this point.
Maybe, although if she's touching green and she's playing enough green sources to morph it up later in the game, that could make the last cut.
Sidisi's pet as well, good against aggressive strategies. I like at this point, she's gotten live picks at almost every pick from this pack, which means I think she'll have a sideboard to play with.
And because of this, I like her pick of the land over the Horde Mate in retrospect because she's definitely gotten to 23 playables.
Yeah, and Alabaster Kieran for her as well now. Getting quality creatures at each slot here.
Pick up the pen. 5 seconds.
And that's a Russia battle. You still don't feel like she's a rush deck.
I don't think that's making her deck.
They have the pack to your left. You should have 2.
But this draft went extremely well. Really the only, she did have good opens in Pack 2 and Pack 3 with Murderous Cut and Siege Rhino. But besides that, there wasn't a lot of especially good luck that fell upon her. She just stayed solid, stayed steady, didn't deviate, and has a really powerful Obzon deck as a result.
Yeah, it was very high discipline. She really built her deck on the back of a lot of commons here. It wasn't her first picks that led her anywhere. It was really those picks 3 through 6 in each pack where she made her deck.
Just great discipline, and it's easy to not have that in gold formats. It's easy to go off the road, and she had all sorts of temptations along the way. Could have easily moved into Mardu. Some of those Jeskai cards must have been tempting, even though that would have been a full redirection of her draft. But even though Pack 1 was going a little bit shaky there towards the middle, did not deviate and I think this is a deck that can muster together 2 wins and a spot in the top 8.